Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the webinar, The eDOCS Upgrade You Need in 2019. Before we begin, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. This webinar will be recorded for future on-demand viewing. All registrants will receive a follow-up email after the conclusion of the event with instructions on how to access the webinar replay and slide deck. All lines have been placed on a listen-only mode. If you have any questions, we invite you to please use the questions feature located in the bottom right corner. We will host a Q&A segment at the end of the webinar, and we'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible. If we are unable to answer all of your questions, we will follow up with you after the webinar. Our speaker today is Josh Wertheim, President of Wertheim Global Solutions. Josh, you may now begin.
Thank you, Melissa, and welcome everybody to our next segment of webinars regarding our WinkTools suite, which is otherwise known as How to Supercharge Your OpenText eDOCS Environment. I'm going to begin by going through a very brief PowerPoint presentation, and then I'm going to dive right into a demonstration of the features and functions of WinkTools, including some new things we've been adding over the past several months, usually based upon customer feedback and requests for enhancements to be able to support their environments. Just as an overlay, WinkTools does support every version of eDOCS from 5.3.1 all the way through 16.5, and it is our intention to continue to update the product to be able to support future versions of eDOCS as they are announced and released. So the question becomes for customers who support eDOCS is, what do you spend your DM budget on? Things that I've listed here include enhancing its capabilities and its integrations, performing upgrades as you desire, the cost of licensing and maintenance from OpenText itself, training your users and your support staff, the infrastructure to support the eDOCS environment, management of the system, and the support necessary to allow your users to run with as minimal problems as possible. So how do you make your support more cost effective for the people who support the product? I've listed two things here. One is you hire great people to do the supporting of eDOCS, and then you give them great tools to do their job, which is where WinkTools comes in. So why do we find customers buying WinkTools and using it? Sometimes we have clients that have been using it for well over a decade and continually enhance their environment by updating to the latest version. First is, no matter the size, every organization needs a way to maintain and support their environment beyond what library maintenance and the eDOCS tools provide you with. In a multi-library environment particularly, it's difficult to maintain consistency across those libraries when you need to be able to do things like cross-library searching or collaboration amongst users in different locations. What we have found over the past 20 plus years that we've been supporting the eDOCS and Hummingbird and PCDocs environments is that there are additional things that are necessary to provide that support. SQL scripts are costly to develop and maintain, and if you have ever tried to develop a SQL script for a specific purpose and then update your eDOCS environment, you have to make sure that SQL script can continually support updates as you go from 5.3.1 to 10 to 16.1 to 16.5 and everything in between. Whenever you have somebody that leaves the firm or organization, and then you got to bring somebody else in, you have to retrain them on all the things that that person who left the firm did. And when you have a one-off in-house solution that's developed, training is required to make sure that that person knows how to run and support that particular application or function. A lot of times a function is needed right now, meaning that somebody calls you and says, I have a problem right now that I need to try to fix, or perhaps a report that you need to run. And a lot of times WinkTools can provide that capability or that report without you having to go through a lot of gyrations to get that information to the person or to solve their problem. And that's what WinkTools can do for you. Wing Tools is the centerpiece of a suite of products for eDOCS. We call it library maintenance on steroids because it's got so much more in it, about 140 different things, as you will see. And it can, not that it can do everything, but we wanted to do as many things as humanly possible to provide our users with to support their environment. We have another part of Wing Tools suite called Wing Sync. If you have a multi-library environment, it's a very cost-effective and simple way to maintain data synchronization across your libraries, whether you're a law firm and you need to make sure your clients and matters exist in all your libraries, or people, or groups, or people groups, or document types, or any custom validation tables that you may have added to your environment. Wing Sync can handle the synchronization of that. It's automatic and seamless. Another module of the Wing Tools suite is called Wing Archive, and it is sort of like to documents, emails, and folders what Wing Sync is for data. So if you need to replicate a boilerplate across multiple locations, or maybe you have a center location where engineering documents are created and maintained, and you need to make sure that the latest version of that engineering document is distributed out to all your other locations. That's what Wing Archive can provide you with. We have a ethical wall or Chinese wall product called Wing Wall. It's a very popular application because it allows you to set security around your documents based upon metadata. So you can set up a wall around the client and all the matters for that client. You can set a wall around a specific matter for that client. You can set a wall around an author that says anytime this person is the author of a document, I want to be able to set security to match this particular list of trustees. Or any validation data. Again, we're not limited to just clients and matters. You can set up a wall around a document type. You can set a wall around an application. You can set a wall around any custom tables that you may have added into the environment. And then last but not least is DMS Sync. DMS Sync maintains a synchronization of users, groups, and group memberships between your Active Directory and your eDOCS environment. It's not just a synchronization of user IDs and network aliases. It's also a synchronization of any of the metadata associated with the user or group in the Active Directory into the eDOCS people or groups tables. So for instance, you can set up a map between a user's email address in Active Directory and have that value set into the email address column in the people table. And any other information in Active Directory related to the user or group can similarly be synchronized to the eDOCS person or group that's associated with that user. So as I said, Wing Tools is library maintenance on steroids. It's got a lot of different capabilities, but I kind of break them down into 6 separate and distinct areas. The first is general housekeeping. We have tools inside Wing Tools that do things like help you clean up metadata. Give me a list of the document types that have no documents. Give me a list of people that haven't been active in a certain amount of time. Things like that you can do with Wing Tools. It gives you the ability to be a lot more proactive in identifying problems, troubleshooting situations before they become problems, and resolving the issue before it becomes a disaster. There's a lot of auditing capability within Wing Tools, which can help reduce risk. There is a lot of support for handling projects within an environment. For instance, there are tools in there to help you do library consolidation. That's a very popular feature of Wing Tools, especially nowadays when folks want to merge multiple libraries into a single database in a single location. It helps you control your environment, and then there's just general maintenance and management utilities and reports that are built into Wing Tools to help you do your job a lot better or easier. This is not everything, but this is just kind of an example of why we call it a Swiss Army knife or library maintenance on steroids. There are all these different tools within Wing Tools that help you do your job a lot more efficiently. This is a sample screen from Wing Tools. You'll get to see the real thing in just a few seconds. So I won't belabor what this screen is at this moment. And then we have the menus in Wing Tools. Again, I'm going to just go very quickly through these because, as you can see, this isn't even current. There are more features and functions and reorganization of the menus in the most recent version than what you would see here. Just a sample of some of the things that there are menu items for. And I could go on and on and on. There are so many features and functions in here, and I'm not going to go through them all, obviously, today, but I just wanted to give you a flavor for the capabilities and extensiveness of what Wing Tools can provide you. So I'm going to go through some very quick use cases. There was a client, and these are actually real use cases. A client that needed to be able to export documents with meaningful file names from a list of clients and matters that they wanted to export. So we have a function in Wing Tools called export documents from a list. It's just an ASCII list that has a list of the clients and matters, and running that against that list will export all the documents associated with those clients and matters. But it doesn't stop there. It also exports all the metadata into a common delimited ASCII file that can then be easily imported into an application such as Excel to be manipulated and used as the end user requiring the export sees fit. We have clients, this isn't that client that I'm going to refer to, but we have a client that acquired another law firm, and that other law firm had acquired some of the partners and associates from another law firm. And the other law firm agreed that it was okay for them to take their documents with them. So they used this to export the documents with the metadata out of the old system with it that the attorneys had come from, brought it over to the new firm, massaged all the metadata and all the other information, and then used it the opposite of the export function, which is an import from an ASCII list, which is basically the metadata, to bring those documents into the new firm. Obviously, they had to enter in all the client matter information associated with those documents, but once that was done, and the users and groups and all the other things, it was a relatively simple process of getting the documents in and correctly profiled. We have a client that's an investment bank, and a user was being moved from location A, I'll say it's Los Angeles, to location B, I'll say it's New York. And they wanted all that information that was in the Los Angeles library moved to the New York location. So we have a function in here called move user, which can move everything associated with that, or a limited set of the things that they want to move, including folders and workspaces, from one library to another. Now, it's a move that can be an absolute move, so that after the move is completed, the user can be disabled in the original library, so that that user no longer accesses that original library, which is useful for consolidating libraries. You move a user from the outlying library into the consolidated library, and after the move is completed, you can say disable this user in that other library so that they can't log into it, and that's how you could easily retire a library by moving users and their information. There is a capability in Wing Tools which allows you to determine who has accessed information without authorization, kind of a precursor to our Guardian software, which can actually give you this information in real time. But if you need to know what somebody has done and you're not activity monitoring with Guardian, you can go back in and run reports that will show you exactly what that person's been doing within a certain date range. We call it the Guardian Analysis Report because what it does is it compares recent activities with what a user normally does and identifies when the user exceeds his normal count for those sensitive activities. Another example of a use case would be a secretary leaves a firm. A new secretary comes into the firm to replace that secretary, and they want that new secretary to become the author and typist for all the documents that the old secretary had before. there's a function in Wing Tools called remove and reassign documents and rights, which allows you to say, assign Joe's documents to Jane. And it'll take all the information associated with Joe, where that Joe is an author, a typist, an activity typist, an owner of a quick search, a owner of a folder, an owner of a work, anything such as that, plus anywhere that the user Joe is identified as a trustee of the documents, and assigns that trustee rights and everything else to the new user Jane. A business wants to remove obsolete document types from the system. Well, there's a cleanup feature that you can run on any table that identifies document types that have no documents, or any metadata that have no that are not being used. And there is the remove and reassign function for that as well, which allows you to remove document types that have no documents. But it could also serve another function. Let's say you have a document type called letter and another document type called LTR, and you don't want to have two, you only want to have one. So the remove and reassign function can also be used to transfer the documents from document type letter to document type LTR, and then allows you to remove the LTR document type. I don't know if anybody's still having this problem, but if you need to know when a document is saved with 0 bytes, the missing document report will report on the missing document files. And we have an optional component in Wing Tools, which would allow you, if you use it, to restore from the last user's shadow drive, the document that, if it's not 0 bytes, to the system. So if it's saved as 0 bytes on the server, but it's not 0 bytes on the last user's shadow drive, the last person who edited the document or checked out the document or whatever, this will allow you to then find that document on that user's machine and then copy it back into the system, overwriting the 0 byte file. You need to restore a database. This is actually goes back to 9/11, when we were in New York and we had a client in downtown New York that lost their servers. And when they had to restore everything, they realized that the document backup was different than the database backup. So what they did was they ran a missing document profile report, which will scan all the documents in the document server after it is restored and bring in any document that doesn't have a profile associated with it. And with that, I will switch over to the demo, and I'll shut this guy down. No, I don't. What the heck? And I don't use that anymore. Okay, so this is the Wing Tools screen. I hope you all can see it. This is the screen as it comes up when you first start Wing Tools. On the left side would be the list of all the libraries in your environment. And there are functions you can perform on the library. You do that by right mouse clicking on the library, and I will go through these in just a few seconds. When you click the plus sign next to the library, you get a list of all the tables in your eDOCS library, including any custom tables that you may have added into the basic system. And when you click on a table here, you right mouse click, and you have this list of functions that you can perform on that table. And again, I will come back to this in just a moment. To just continue, you can actually drill down and look at the data dictionary associated with the table. This is a list of all the columns in the table. Very useful for developers to be able to do this because it shows you where the keys are, what type of key it is, and if you click on the plus sign next to a table that has a key to another table, you can actually get information upon the link from that table to the other table. So in this case, I've added in a table called client types to identify what type of client there is in my environment, whether it's, in my case, as developers and resellers and software company that sells software, we have clients that are partners, clients that are end user customers, and other types of clients. And so we want to associate what type of client it is with the client itself. So because we have that link from client to client types, I can actually see not only that there is a link, but what that link is. So in this case, the link is to the system ID in the client types table, and here is the list of columns in the client types table. And the drilling down could be endless. There's a target doc server here that if I click next to it, you see everything about the document server if I want to see that. And you can keep on going as far as you need to go. One of the other things that's really neat in Wing Tools is the ability to actually run what's called a unique values report. I want to see the count of all the different document types, or in this case, client types, I should say, in the client table. How many clients in the client table are end users? How many are partners? How many are vendors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you actually can drill down and get a little useful information just by drilling through in the columns. And again, you get that with any table. It's any table, you have this ability. So I want to document count by document type would be another example. You can get the unique values report for document type. Okay, across the top, we have what are called enterprise functions. If you have multiple libraries, we have this menu called enterprise. And this gives you a lot of useful information or can help you identify where there might be differences in the data dictionary, differences in the system parameters, differences in the group parameters, a count of rows in every one of the tables, a count of documents aggregated by user across all the libraries, a recent user report. If you want to know how many people have logged into your environment in the last 90 days or 365 days, you can run that here. We have a purge activity log function. Now, if you do not have more than one library, these menu options appear under the library itself. So I would see a purge activity log here, and I would see a recent user report here. So, but you have all these capabilities that help you manage a multi-library environment. We also have a scheduler built into Wing Tools. There are a lot of things that you can schedule to run at a certain time of day or day of week or every day or every 2 hours or whatever. And these activities include activity log purge, where you can say, I want to purge anything that's over 365 days old for these type of activities every Wednesday at midnight. The database import is extremely useful. Let's say that you want to use the eDOCS database import function. The limitation to that is you actually have to load the database import function, and then you have to click the import or import all button. You have to manually start it. With Wing Tools, you can set up those database import sets and then say, I want to run this import automatically every 2 hours. And we actually have clients that do it every 2 hours. They want to import their client matter list 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, etc. every day of the week. And they do that using database import. We have a synchronization function that you can also set up and schedule, which says, I want to synchronize my clients and matters from Coconut Creek to Virginia every 2 hours. And there is a limitation to that our WingSync product addresses, and that is that with WingSync, if you change a key in a row, let's say you change the client ID or the user ID, Wing Tools won't recognize what to synchronize. And so you would end up with 2 rows for basically the same client or the same matter in the downstream libraries. WingSync, however, is designed so that if you change a candidate key, the user ID of a person from J Jones to Jones J, for instance, it will be smart enough to say, okay, I know I should be looking for J Jones in the downstream library, but if I don't find J Jones, look for Jones J. And it handles candidate key changes much better effectively. So, but if that's not a concern to you, then the data synchronization in Wing Tools is more than adequate for maintaining synchronization between two libraries or two or more libraries. You can schedule SQL statements to run, sort of like running stored procedures in SQL, but not typically used, but it does give you the ability. A couple of folder management utilities that can be scheduled, including fixed folders and purge folders. Fixed folders will check to see if all the links between a folder, its subfolders, and the documents in its subfolders and folder itself are correctly set up in the various tables. And if not, it corrects those mistakes. Purge folders allows you to say, I want to go through the system, and any folder that's empty, that hasn't been touched in X number of days, you decide the number of days, get rid of it. It's unused, it's just cluttering up space. I don't need it in the system anymore. And you can run that on a scheduled basis, maybe once a week. And again, you set the parameter for how far back do I want to check for activity. So you can say, if this folder hasn't been touched in a year, I don't need to keep it anymore. Or perhaps you might say, I don't need to keep it if it hasn't been touched in a week. Somebody creates a folder, doesn't put anything into it after a week, I want to get rid of it. What's the point of having it? A couple of the reports that are available on demand or on from a scheduler are what are called the missing document files report and the missing document profile report. The missing document files report will check to see if every profiled component has a matching file document in the document server. And if not, it'll flag it in the report. Not only that, but it checks to see if the file does exist, whether it's 0 bytes. So if it's 0 bytes, meaning the file is there but it's empty, it'll flag that as well. And it'll flag it differently by putting the name in brackets. And that kind of is a useful report to run when you first install WigTools for sure, and then perhaps you want to run it weekly. So instead of having to come here and manually run it, you can say schedule to run every Sunday night at midnight. I mentioned the missing document profile report. That scans for mismatches between what's on the document server and in the database. So if there's a file on the document server, what WigTools will do is it'll say, is there a profile for this document? So it looks at the fully qualified path in the various tables in eDOCS and says, does / WGSL / C drive / blah, blah, blah. Is there a profiled component in the database? And if not, it identifies that the file has no documents. It skips documents with BK extensions and BAK extensions. So, and things like, what's the other one? The PR1 extensions. It skips those, doesn't bother with them, but it doesn't. But it does check the existence of any document with a valid extension, as defined in the app file extensions table. Now, what you can do with the missing document file report is you can obviously go to a backup device to see if you can locate it there. But if you can't and you don't want it cluttering up the system, what you can do is you can identify the files that you don't want to deal with anymore and either delete the profile if it's the only version, mark the version unavailable, or mark the whole profile unavailable, so that things, people can't access the document profile for the file when the document itself isn't there. From the missing document profile report, what we can do is we can say, bring these documents into eDOCS, bring these files into eDOCS, and it sees how much information it can gather from the path template of the file. So if you have your document files organized by client matter, and that's how the document server is set up, then it will know that this is the client, this is the matter, or client matter doc type, or author doc type, or whatever structure you have. So it can pre-populate what the profile fields are going to look like. And then it makes some intelligent guesses about some other things, and then gives you the ability to override what it has done and guessed in order to accomplish the bringing of those document files in. The activity log analysis report is a report that tells you what people have been doing in the system over a certain number of days. We scheduled that because it was something a client wanted to have scheduled once a week. They just wanted to be able to, at midnight on Monday or whatever day of the week it is, they wanted to be able to automatically run it. So when they came in, it was already there on the screen and they wouldn't forget to check it. And again, pretty much all the additions and changes you'll be seeing from the version you may be used to if you have used WingTools before are always based upon customer feedback. And if a customer has a request for something and it's logical, and it's not something that would be a total one-off just for that client, we'll throw it in and make it available to everybody. So let me go back to the library menu just for a sec. And this was reorganized in the last couple of months to make it a little simpler and more organized. So we have what we call library reports. Here would be the recent users report, how many users have logged into the system over the past X number of days into this library only, as opposed to the enterprise recent users report, which would give you the aggregate of all the users in all the libraries. And if a user is logged into more than one library in that time, it only shows the user once with the last library they logged into. This is the library settings report is kind of an audit report. The dictionary report is an audit report. You can get a list of all the people group memberships here. You can get a list of all the network aliases here. And then you can get what's called a library contents matrix. You have this on an enterprise level or on an individual library level. What it does is it gives you a count of all the rows and all the tables. So it tells you how many clients you have, how many matters you have, etc. As opposed to the enterprise library contents or contents matrix, which will show you across the screen, library by library by library, for each table, how many rows are in each table. And if there is a mismatch, it'll flag that line. So you can say, okay, wait a second, why do I have 37,000 matters in Boston and 38,000 in New York and 36,000 in Chicago? And then you could say, I better do some checking to figure out why my matters are out of sync. Here's where the move user function is. I can move a user from this library to another library. The next screen would show you who the user is. You pick the user, answer a bunch of simple questions. What do I want to move? And it takes care of moving that user from, if I pick Guardian Test, then it would be Guardian Test. So that user is all of that user's information that you designated to be moved is now in the Guardian Test library. The copy documents to another library function is very popular. You can say, I want to make a copy of documents based upon who the author is, or the typist, or the primary group. So I can take all of the litigator's documents and copy them to another library. I can take a folder. I can run a query to say this specific list of documents I want to move, or I can do a date range. Date range is for a phased consolidation, where prior to moving the user, you may want to say, well, listen, anything older than 3 years, I want to move ahead of time before I start moving those users. And anything that hasn't been accessed in 3 years, and then 2 years, and then 1 year. And so when you actually do the move user, the only thing that's left behind to move is the last year worth of documents and folders, etc. One of the most popular functions is export documents, because you have all these ways to export documents out. You can export by author, by typist, a specific document type, a specific application, a matter, a query, the input file. That's what I was referring to before with the use cases. From a list, you can say this list of documents I want to export. You can export an entire library if you want to. You can export all the documents where the litigators group is a trustee or a security user, where the managing partner is a trustee. Or you can export a folder structure or check out a folder structure. You want to get rid of, not get rid of, you want to export and check out an entire folder at once. This is how you do it. Now, what's really nice is the import. The corollary of export is import. So you can export the documents. Somebody can then go ahead and edit a few of them and now you want to import them back in. You don't know which ones the person edited. So when you say from the WinkTools export log, what it does is it checks, not only does it check to see if the document folder, a document profile already exists, but if it does exist, it then looks at the timestamp of the file versus the timestamp of the file on the document server and says, wait a second, this document is the same. I don't need to import it again because I'm just overriding what's already there. So it'll then import the document and give you the choice of replacing the original or importing it as a new version. So it takes care of all that housekeeping. Now, if the document is not in eDOCS, because maybe you added some stuff into the table, into the directory structure that's exported, it'll then add the profile. So you can use this not only for maintaining, it's kind of like sync and save, but on a different level, because sync and save is for what you've been doing and what you put into a directory, whereas this could be something that somebody takes off site and then comes back in, puts it on a CD or a USB drive or whatever, and then when they come back in, they just say to somebody in IT, I want these documents back in. I edited them over the weekend. I did my e-discovery, I'm done. Or you can just do an import from a local drive, which is kind of like the import documents function in eDOCS, but it's got a lot more bells and whistles and capabilities, and it's much more reliable, which a lot of these functions are, because it doesn't stop on things like paper documents when it does exporting. So it's a lot. I consider it a lot smarter than eDOCS, and we're not smarter than eDOCS, but this is a lot smarter than the capabilities of some of the utilities that they provide. The secure documents function will allow you to resecure documents based on, again, all sorts of different criteria. So you can say, I want to take all the documents where the litigators are trustees, and I want to add the paralegals with denied rights to all those documents. Or I want to take all the documents where litigators are in it and replace the entire security of all those documents with Jones, Smith, and Adams. So you can either do an append of a trustee or a replace of one list of trustees with another. And that goes for any of these. So for instance, I can say anytime Jones is the typist, replace Jones with Smith, and which makes no sense. Usually you don't replace Jones with Smith, replace Adams with Smith, because you don't want to take out the typist. But you can do that with based upon any of these criteria. Here is a function if you rapidly want to make a lot of documents read-only. Again, look at all these different options you have. I want to mark all the documents. This is very popular. All the documents that are marked for deletion, I want to make read-only. This was added based upon a customer request. So you could just say anything marked for deletion that's older than 30 days, I want to make read-only, and it'll take care of all the housekeeping associated with that. You also have the ability to delete documents, not marked for deletion, delete. I want to get rid of all the documents that are marked for deletion. I want to get rid of all the documents for a matter. I want to get rid of all the documents for any of these things, or from a list of clients that matters. Again, that was a customer request. So you have that capability as well. Now we delve into the reports. And we've added a few over the past couple of months. See if I can remember which ones are the new ones. We have the missing document files report, which is based upon any of these criteria. The missing document profiles report, which I already explained. You want to know what documents are in use at this particular moment, you can get that report. All sorts of ways to get an activity log analysis report. I want to see everything in the system versus I want to see it for an author or a typist or a threshold. I want to see any document. I want to see all the activity where the activity count is over 300 for access denied, or 30. You can get a folder contents report. What's in the folders where a specific author is identified, or a specific typist is identified, or an entire group. So I want to see all the litigators folders and what's in them. The Guardian analysis report is I think I mentioned this one, it's a report that tells you where somebody is up or down on the threshold of what they normally do within a certain time range. So I want to know anytime that I want to see all the users that their access denies are higher than they normally are, and you tell it what the threshold is. So I want to see anytime it's 50%. I want to see which ones are 50% above the threshold. This is extremely useful for setting up Guardian, which is why we call it Guardian Active Analysis Report. Because when you set up your rules in Guardian, or Defense for that matter, if you choose that option, you will kind of want to know, well, what are my thresholds? What are my base thresholds to start with? You don't want to have to guess and then have to continually monitor and maintain and update. Excuse me. We put that information into a table for processing it called, it's a Guardian table. And so this is a function you would run before you run the Guardian Analysis Report. It's better for performance for end users while you're running the Guardian Analysis Report because it's really heavily database intensive. So by putting it into a separate table, we free the day-to-day activities of activity log, which is the main one we go after. So by summarizing it into another table, it's easier and better for performance. We have a document list, folder path reports, component listing. And I never understood why a client wanted that. They wanted to know the fully qualified path name and what the document number was based upon the file name. You want to get a file size report by a size threshold. I want to see all the Excel spreadsheets that are over 100 megabytes. Full text indexing, kind of chokes on very large files. So you might want to identify which ones are the huge ones, and then turn off full text indexing on those profiles, which we can do from the results. What documents have been transferred or copied? What documents are checked out? What documents are marked for deletion? What are the workspaces? Who has what workspace? What's in them? And who owns the quick searches? And this is really kind of nice because if the owner of a quick search leaves the firm, who owns the quick search? Who can maintain it if nobody else has rights to? So you can transfer ownership of the quick search right from the results here. Under utilities, again, these are useful utilities when you have problems or to make sure and be proactive that you're not going to have a problem down the road. So it does things like checking launch methods, checking for duplicates, system IDs, making sure that the next key to be assigned is not lower than a key that's already assigned, check and reset checked out documents, check application file extensions, that's relatively new, missing profile metadata, very useful to see if there's any missing links between your profile and the tables it's associated with. So is the profile pointing to a valid matter? Is the profile pointing to a valid document type? And anytime you find something that's broken, it'll give you the results. This compares the group parameters and settings to the eDOCS parameters to show you where it's different, which is useful. And again, that's something that you can get at the enterprise level as well. But what it does is it tells you, well, let's see, I have network level security turned on for one, but not another, or things like that. Or profile level security, definitely a big one. There's the folder cleanup and folder purge, which you can run from here. The verify folder information, which checks to make sure that all the links are set properly. You can import a folder structure from an ASCII list. Our largest client loved this. We did it for them. It's a British law firm with thousands and thousands of users. And what they wanted to do is, when they acquired another firm, they had this way of, they wanted to set up folders based upon a client matter. Every time a new client matter for this firm that they acquired was added into the system, they wanted to make sure that this folder structure existed for that client matter. So this was great. They love this. Clean up network aliases. We'll make sure that every network alias points to a valid network ID. Clean up people groups. Make sure that all the people in groups associated with them. Sorry about that. Where was I? Coconut Creek utility. Clean up people groups that the person or group associated with the people groups is valid. disable inactive people. This is relatively new also. What this will do is it'll go through and gives you a list of all the people that have had absolutely no activity since 90 days or 180 days or 365 days, and they want to disable them and disable their allow logging option. Reorganize document files is important if you have SharePoint, because it'll take the document folders, the document tab template, and rework it so that the documents are in typically client matter order, as opposed to author doc type or author application. If you have Microsoft SQL, you get the Microsoft SQL menu with all these things you can do regarding your database. One that's really useful, I'll show you, is list triggers. This is the list of all the triggers in your database, and you can toggle them on or off if you want to. So this trigger is for Winkwall, and I want to disable it. I can disable it right from here, and you don't need to know SQL to do this, which makes it useful. You can actually run SQL statements from within WinTools without needing SQL client. Again, very useful. And actually, when you bring up the window, you actually see the SQL statements that WinTools has run, and you can scroll through them if you want, and run any of them again. And then we have something called the component check. What this does is it actively monitors the document servers for documents that are open in eDOCS by users, and every X number of seconds, 60 seconds, let's say, it checks to make sure that that file is not 0 bytes. So if you are concerned about 0-byte files and when they occur, this can actually actively monitor documents that are open and check on every 5 seconds if you wanted to make sure it's not 0 bytes. And if it's 0 bytes, it tells you, and then you can contact the user and say, hang on, you're about to save a 0-byte file. Don't do anything till I get there, or connect into your system, your computer, so we can make sure that we don't lose what's on the shadow. Or we save it outside of eDOCS and then bring it back in later. So it helps minimize the amount of work that's lost. If you have any of our add-on modules installed, you can run functions associated with them. And for instance, Winkwall, I want to see the list of conflicts or the list of trustees. Okay, now I have been showing you stuff for the better part of half an hour, and I only have one more menu to show you, and that is what you can do with a table. So from the table, I can list the contents. Let me go to document types because I actually don't mind showing you that. You can list the contents. What that does is it gives you a list. You can run a query on the contents. You can set lookup security right from here. So if you have enabled lookup security, you can actually set lookup security for a value right from here instead of having to go to Management Studio. If you have this and you don't want to have Management Studio, it's a very good alternative. Copy tables, search and replace, cleanup, and things like that you can also do here. What you can do with the list, from the list, are all these sorts of functions. You can copy, sync to all libraries, edit the row. I don't know if you know this, but we have an in-place editor that exposes all the columns. And not only that, but rather than having to go back to the list in library maintenance, you can actually scroll to go from one to the next, make a change. If you've made a change, it'll automatically apply the change when you hit the scroll button, or you can just say save, and then when you're done, close. You can set trustees if you have our Winkwall software. You can audit the security of any item, showing all the unsecured items associated with this particular document type, or set a trustee for this document type for Winkwall, or replace one trustee with another. You could, for all the documents associated with this document type. You can also close an item right from here. So if you have the need to close a matter, more likely you would do that. And you want to identify the matter as being closed. and you have actually, if you have a column called closed in the matter table, this will actually check it for you, and then it'll make all the documents associated with this, in this case, matter, read-only. So I've gone through a lot in a very short amount of time. I don't see any questions, so I think unless there are any questions, I will turn it back over to Melissa, who will help wrap this up. Thank you all for your attention, and I appreciate your being here.
Hi, everyone. So if anyone does have any questions at any later time, please feel free to email us at any time, and we will answer your questions as soon as we can. Thank you for attending the webinar, and the webinar is now going to conclude, and you may now disconnect.